Hi everybody, we're going to start soon. We're going to start soon. Opened one in Sirius recently, but I thought I wanted to chat to Andre a bit about his entrepreneurial journey. Just some background about Into Foods. Started in 1996 with 60 staff, and then in 2004 they moved into a bigger premises from 60 staff to 150 staff, and then in 2010 to 700 staff. So it shows that the business was growing substantially. And then they had a merger in 2016 with Into Food. So I wanted to find out more about this journey. Of course, Nibbly Bits makes biscuits and nice food, brownies. So if you're joining for the first time, Paarl Business Lab is just a lab where we have entrepreneurs and business owners come chat and ask questions to the entrepreneurs that grow businesses. Andre, welcome.
Thanks, Miles. I'm going to stand, Zita, if you don't mind. Yeah. Can you hear the mic working? Yeah. So I think when you talk about entrepreneurship, you wonder where to start. And maybe I should start with the advice that my father gave me. In those days, in the 1980s, we didn't have career guidance. And he told me, son, you're finishing school, you've got to go work or you've got to go and study. Those are the two options I had. But I fortunately had a third option. In those days, we had to do 2 years of national service. So I had to go and do 2 years in the army, and that was, for white males, that was our 2 years of being previously disadvantaged. It certainly for me, wasn't a pleasant experience, but we had to do it. So coming out of the army, I had to go and, as my father said, you either got to go and work or you got to go and study. And so I decided to study. So the people asked me, what you going to do? So I said, I'm going to Stellenbosch. And I said, what are you going to do there? I'm going to go play rugby. That was about it. That was about as far as my vision took me. Don't, at that stage, rugby was an amateur game anyway. You weren't even making money out of it. So I don't know what I was thinking, but I went to go and study, and I had to borrow money to study. So that was probably the first time I had to deal with money. Yeah, I studied accounting and did my articles, and I worked on a wine farm in Stellenbosch, and then I joined Bacoma, which became Pioneer Foods, as in the financial department, and then telling Miles, well, where to from there. So there was always, as I say, with my father, we spoke about, well, what's it to be an entrepreneur? And do you think the family can have a business? So it was never a vision that we set out on paper, but we always knew that we could do this. It was there. It was in our minds. And as I said to Miles, my dad had started this little project, and at some stage he said, no, he's not very keen to carry this on. He had some complications, and it wasn't always easy. And I said, well, let's see what we can do. I resigned my job at Pioneer Foods, and as all entrepreneurs do, you got to find money from somewhere. And as we all know, as entrepreneurs, the banks aren't interested in your worries. So I took my provident fund and I put it in the business, and that's how we started the business at that stage. And we grew it over a period of time from when I became part of the business in 2002, as Miles said. It grew to that period until 2017, where we sold it to Into Food. It was actually a merger. We sold it. And that's the Nibbly factory that you can see here. It was always in Wellington, and it was moved here because when you did the transaction, I said to the Into Food guys that bought it, oh, yeah, you can buy the business, but by the way, we've run out of space. We're going to have to need to build another factory. And that was one of the reasons why I suppose we sold. We've got to a point where this business had just become too big for a little family. We didn't have historical money. We didn't have a grandfather. Is this still okay, Peter? I didn't have grandparents or anybody with money. We had to fund it from ourselves. And we got to the point where, well, we just couldn't fund it on our own anymore. And to make the business really grow and to benefit the people, we had to find either investors or sell the business, because it just couldn't fly on that level. And I think as entrepreneurs, we all know you forever don't have enough money. You forever have cash flow problems. And if you're not an entrepreneur and you never started your own business, you'd never know that. Entrepreneurs are, I think, a very unique species, I suppose, that you've got to be able to do everything, especially when you started out. I went from a business where I was the financial manager of a department, and I used to come to work and park in a parking space and walk up the stairs and sit at my computer in my office, and if something broke, I'd phone the IT department or the telephone department and somebody would come fix it. So when you start your own business, it doesn't work that way. If your telephone breaks, you phone Telkom. You don't get a response, and it's frustrating. And you've got to deliver your product. Nobody delivers it, so you get in your bakkie and you deliver it to the DC. It's just what you do. But these things have a way of being advantageous and advantage to you. And I remember the story where a couple of years later we actually managed to get going, and we managed to find somebody to do the delivery contracting for us. And he went to the DC to drop the product off, and I can't remember the actual situation, but he came back and he said this, that, and that, and that's why I couldn't do this. I said, no, it doesn't work that way. I know it doesn't work that way because I did it myself. And he, obviously was lying to me about what he did because I'd done it myself. But that's sort of unique to entrepreneur. You've got to jump in, pitch in, and do what needs to get done. There's no such thing as, well, we'll delegate to this and we'll call somebody in, because number one, you can't find that person, you don't have time. Number two, you just can't afford that those people. So one of the things I did learn about business is that just because you've started it and you've got going doesn't mean that's a recipe for success. You've got to be really, really in touch with your business at all times. Otherwise, you can run into a lot of trouble. Especially when you grow your business, you're going to run out of cash. Your working capital cycle just gets to you, and you've got to be very aware that you can pay your creditors. I remember times where at the end of the month I said, "How are we going to pay our creditors? What are we going to do? The customer's only paying then. We've got to pay the customers here." So you've got to learn to cope with these things. And the best that I could come up with was, well, let's be upfront with these guys. Say, listen, I can't pay you tomorrow, but in 6 or 7 days' time, I can pay you. And so you should have built that trust with suppliers. But gradually, as you go, the banks will start talking to you. Maybe not lending you money, but certainly start talking to you. And you've got to fill in form upon form upon form and upon form. And then they offer you a deal which is totally ridiculous, and you say, "Well, how can you do that?" So it's not an easy life. But looking back on the journey, it's a very rewarding process. Working for somebody's got its advantages and disadvantages, but working for yourself just comes is just that extra. What I found was just the creativity that it brings to you of problem solving and doing what you need to done to put money in the bank. And that journey was, for me, certainly rewarding. And it's the other point I would like to make is that it's easy for me to stand here and say, that it was a rewarding journey. But when you're in the journey, it's very difficult sometimes. You sometimes can't see the wood from the trees. You sit there and 6 o'clock at night and everybody's gone home and you're there. You say, well, what if this and what if that and what about that? And it's not always so self-evident what the next step must be. That's why, Miles, I think a lab like this is a really important thing, that the guys can bounce ideas off each other and get together and say, I'm struggling with the same problem, and that's my issue here, and let's try this. I tried this, you try that. I think it's a really, really important process. I joined a business organization which was that. We would get together once a month and just discuss our issues, because it doesn't matter how big your business is. If you're the owner, you're the chairman and CEO. You're the person on top, and the buck stops with you. And it actually sometimes gets lonely at the top, even if it's just you and one other person. It's still very lonely, because sometimes the factors of life and business just weigh in on you. People always ask me, what I want to be an entrepreneur. What do you mean? What are the key ingredients? It's very difficult to say. I've seen entrepreneurs from all walks of life. It doesn't matter what line of business you are. It doesn't matter what your personality is. For me, it doesn't even matter if you've studied or not. I think the best education you can have is a thing called common sense. If you've got common sense, you either know what to do, or you either know where to go, and you've got to ask somebody now, because there's a problem. I can't go further, and that's just common sense. You've got to be able to exercise that.
I think like one of the questions I always ask is, you were working 9 to 5 and you saw opportunity to take over the business. I mean, what made you think it's a good idea, firstly, to resign from a job that is a secure job? Number two is to take your provident fund and put it into a business. I mean, everybody thinks they're an entrepreneur. What were the things in your head that you thought, okay, I'm not an entrepreneur, or when was the entrepreneur bug? When did it bite you that you thought, okay, I can take over?
Miles, let me start here. I mean, the question sometimes is the same with sport people, I suppose. Is an entrepreneur born, or can you become one? I certainly think both. You get born entrepreneurs. You just be people that can buy and sell things and make things and sell it. It just comes naturally. I probably wasn't one of those people, but I always had this yearning that I can do something. There's something that can be done, which I can build. I think as human beings, we've got this. We've been created to build and to work. I don't think it was ever created to work hard, or it wasn't difficult. But God created us in a good environment, but we turned into a bad one. But that will to do something on my own, you just inherently, I felt I could do it. And as an entrepreneur, at some point you've got to back yourself. You actually can think this thing through and through and through, but then I got to actually walk over the line. I got to leave the things behind me. It has to be a conscious decision and to go. But I mean, it's not that you got to do it in a vacuum. So I mean, I grew up in this valley. I worked for Pacoma and Pioneer Foods. This little business that my dad had started up had 2 products in it, which was food products. So it was something I knew. I had a network. I had a procurement network. I had a link with the customer, which I'm going to get to now. So it wasn't like I decided I'm a sort of a trained accountant and I'm going to go make spacesuits or something, because I've just got no experience in that field. It's something that I had a calculated risk and said, oh, I know this, got this I can tick, those boxes I can tick, that I can tick. Yeah, I know that guy that can rent me a facility for cheap because we can get on for it, because he trusts me. It was all things that it was there. It was, could put these things in a block and build a picture and say, it's, I can do this because most of it is there. I mean, as we know in our entrepreneurial journeys, you build it. You never know everything, and everything's never always in place. But I mean, at some point where I got to, I said, there's enough stuff in place where I think I can take the step and move on. Incidentally, when we've all been to school, I hope, yeah. So at school you get primed. I mean, when the bell goes, something happens, and and then it's break, and then you have your lunch, and then you go home, and then at 4:00 it's sport practice, and then at 7:00 your mother calls you for supper, and then the next morning you got to go to school, and the bell rings for everything. And they say, certainly in the army, that was like that. That time was not your own. Even at university, you got to go to lectures, and then you got to write exams, and so the whole education system is actually primed for you to have a job. When you go to work, your work says, okay, from 8:00 your time is mine, and you'll do this and this and this, and at 5:00 you can go home. But we've been primed to do that from when we started out. And when I left the formal employment, my biggest issue wasn't on the 30th of the month when my paycheck came in. That I could sort of, that was an issue. But my biggest issue was to manage my own time. That was a major concern. I remember waking up in the morning and I said, well, nobody's telling me to do anything here. I mean, I'm going to a little factory of 100 square meters, 150 square meters, and if I pitch up, it's fine. If I don't pitch up, it's also fine. Nobody's telling me anything. And that was my biggest hurdle to get over, is the fact that nobody was managing my time anymore. I had to do it myself. So as biggest problem. Yeah. Maybe the next point. Let me touch on customers. I see some people that have got business ideas, and hey, I've got this good process and this product, and I make it like this, and I can do that, and I can change the color of this, and it looks fantastic. But then you ask the question, well, who are you selling it to? Who's your customer? And we'll get there. Now you got to do it the other way around. You've got a great idea, and you can start fiddling with it, and you can get yourself in the mark. Wayne, like you sent me this little thing, yeah, great, yeah, out there doing it, yeah, building the context, looking for the customers. That's your lifeblood. If you don't have customers, you don't have a business. I mean, as I said I think, while talking earlier on, if you run a business and electricity goes off or your machine breaks, it's a problem for your business, especially when you're small, because sometimes you don't have money to fix it. But you can survive that. The customers go, that's terminal. It's a terminal disease. You can't really fix that. So I mean, you've got to spend a lot of time spending with customers in the market. Let them be critical. They must be critical of you and your product. Can you sell them something that they need? The term that I'd read was a thing called WTPs, willingness to pay. That's what the customer. Yeah, you got to find people that are willing to pay for your product or service. That actually term comes from the Harvard Business School, by the way. It's not just a colloquial term that's put out there. And I just love that term. What can I offer somebody what they're willing to pay for? And there's lots of ideas and processes, but you've got to actually engage with people and customers to make it happen.
Andres, so tell us, how do the factory, you have 2 products, are you getting it to clients? Are you knocking on doors? How are you getting people to consume or experience the products you're making?
Look, so there were just 2 products at that stage in the early 90s which were going to Woolworths. Yeah. So we said, okay, well, this is happening. What do you have to start off with? What networks, connections do you have? And has that channel been full, or do we have to go to another channel? And so what we did, we kept pushing the Woolworths channel and speaking to people, having meetings, telling them who we are. They tell us, you're too small, and you're this and that, and what do you know? And so it's knocking at the door, and then we went to Spar, knocked on their door. It was actually the Spar people were a lot easier. It was to get in there. The system was a little bit more complicated, but we needed the business. So we had to take the complication in our business, and so the business grew where we actually started selling, and we could make a little bit more, and so it built until we got to a point where we'd run out of capacity in the factory. And we said, well, what do we do? And we say, need money, and we had to make a call to say we can't carry on like this because we're trying to serve 2 markets in a sense. We don't have money to build a big sales team, but what do we have? So we had a critical analysis of what we had. We had really good production skills. We had a really, really good production manager. Myself, I come from a financial background, so I could put the systems in, make sure everything worked. I mean, somebody asked me, can I make you food here? There's no way. I can make you toasted cheese. I knew that's not my expertise. We had to find somebody to help us. We couldn't employ anybody at that stage, so we had somebody in that was helping us. But we decided we didn't have really any sales and marketing skills other than going to chat to people. So in the end, we decided we actually let the Spar business go, and we grew the Woolworths channel because we couldn't afford the sales and marketing side of the business. So we plowed the money that we did make back into the production part of the business, and that decision paid off. So we got more business, and we developed new product, and we moved out of rusty biscuits to savories and to cheese tours and all those sorts of things. And it's, I'm telling you that in 30 seconds, but that's years, years of earning trust with the customer. Don't overpromise. Tell him what you can do. Can do this, can't do that. Be true to your word, and that's how business has always worked, and it probably still works on that trust basis. Although we've got the technology and everything working, on a virtual basis, it's that human touch which you can't. I mean, you're giving me that thing. It's wonderful. I think it's really, and you got to carry on doing that, because otherwise, you can build your base. So, and as I said earlier on, you got to critically think through your business all the time. You got to be switched on, and that common sense element is really important.
So, like, what do you tell an entrepreneur that believes they got a good product, but they want to get it onto the Spar shelves? I mean, Spar, massive retailer worldwide. How does a company like Nibbly, but small, knock on the door and get it onto the shelves? How does that knocking on doors process work, and how long does it take?
Well, it depends.
Yeah.
Look, we as human beings, we're funny. We're a funny lot. You can come in. There's more people. Yeah. Hi. Yeah, we're a funny lot. We could get on well today, but tomorrow morning you get up and you kick the dog and you're not feeling so good, and we don't get on so well tomorrow because I'm not feeling so good tomorrow. It's about that personal relationship with a guy, and just because he's closed the door once, don't accept it. And I sort of feel it's an inherently part of you. You've got a good product or a process or a service, you will go and punt it again. I think it was Anton Rupert says, don't try and sell something that you wouldn't use yourself. And if you've got a good product, well then just keep punting it. And that rubs off on people, because if you study the communication, I can't remember all the exact percentages, but the words I'm speaking to you now counts 15% of what you're hearing. My body language is about half of what you're hearing, and my tone of voice is about 30% of what you're hearing. And that's just our makeup as human beings. So people perceive you think you've got a good message, but they're picking something else up. If I'm standing like this and I'm like this, we're not open. So I also learned, when you sit at a desk with somebody, you sit forward and you engage with them. If you sit back and you're slouching in your chair, you're not going to get that same rapport. You got to ooze energy when you speak to the customers.
And I mean, starting the business, of course, it relies a lot on labor. Was there ever a time where you just thought, I want to give up? I can't do this anymore?
Of course, there's always that. I'm just thinking how many times. Yeah.
But
correct.
Why would you carry on?
Again, because I believed in what I was doing. Okay. You will have hiccups, and there will be, the term is, what do you call it? Things from the side that come and bump you. You'll have to get over hurdles. That's guaranteed. But you've got to stick the course. One of the things that I also learned in my business is that as long as you're doing the right things every day, over and over again, that's a recipe for success. Don't one day make a good cup of coffee and the next day a bad one. You've got to do the right things over and over again, and that's what we learned in the factory. You can't make a product, let's say a rusk, that one day is okay and the next day is not. And we would spend a lot of time in the factory checking it, and at the end of the line, tasting the product. I mean, I don't know how many rusks I tasted, and saying, that's you can't make that stuff production. Just don't. Would you eat that? I'm not eating it. And again, that's the Anton Rupert story. Only make stuff or sell stuff that you're willing to consume yourself. So that was that culture that you sort of have to sort of dilute through your business. What do you as the entrepreneur want in your business? How does this thing want to run? But as you're right, as this thing gets bigger, in one stage I knew the name of everybody that worked in the factory. When you got 800 people, it's just you can't do that anymore. But that's the nature of the business that is moving and changing. But but at that point you've got to realize that things have changed and you have to change. One of the things that I had to realize, as the business grew, was that you think you sort of think you can do this, but actually realize that you actually can't. I always thought that I could do this quite easily, but you realize that you're only a person and you only know what you know. You need other people to help you with this. Like I say, I mean, I couldn't make anything more than a toasted cheese. So you've got to get the right people in. And as the business grew, I realized that I actually wasn't the right person to take the operation of this business to a next level. I had to find a manager for this business that did this thing better than what I did. That's where Charles came in, by the way. Yeah. And so you've got to actually be brutally honest with yourself to say, these are my weak points, and find people to augment that. Otherwise, your business is going to go down. The business world is a brutal place, and you can't mess around doing that. And that's one of the other things I like about entrepreneurship. You learn so much about yourself in this process, and you've got to realize that as good as you think you are, you're actually not so great. And I think I once heard this definition of an expert in the field. That's somebody that knows more and more about less and less. And the older I get, the more I realize the less I know. And I think that's a good critical balance to have, especially as an entrepreneur building a business. Don't think you know everything. Take that common sense that you're given, that you're born with, and bounce it off people. Otherwise, your business is going to suffer.
Like one of the questions was that your personal journey. So, what did you learn about yourself, and how did you improve on your weaknesses? And what did you like nowadays? You go to YouTube, you get like 10 million entrepreneur videos, or you can go to any social media platform. I'm assuming when you were younger, we didn't have all those social media platforms. So,
really,
what did you use to improve on the weaknesses? And also, what was that personal journey like? What did you learn about yourself personally?
Yeah, look, I'm a disciple of Jesus. For me, my relationship with God is really important. That helped me on the journey. Having that relationship, it just helped me with my decision making. So that took me a long way. I had non-executive directors, like my dad was still a non-executive director. He'd come in when we had directors meetings, and he'd walk to the factory and he'd tell me, that's not working, look at this, look at that. I'd have people helping, coming in. An engineer would come in every now and then, have a look, tell me that's not so efficient. Because when you get caught up in a business, you walk in there, I mean, there could be a massive fault in front of you, but because you're there every day, you just don't see it. But again, so my journey would be my relationship with Jesus, and then got to read. If if you don't read, you're not going to learn. It's really, really, really important to disseminate information and knowledge. And you're right. I didn't grow up in the YouTube era, so I would get information, books, read. Still do. YouTube is a lot easier. I do admit, but I still read quite a lot. I spent time reading case studies on businesses, what works, what doesn't. But again, the problem is that you're still only seeing life out of your filters, and you're always going to need somebody else to come and crit you and your business. Yeah. So I mean, some of the things I learned about myself, I trained to be an accountant, and when you say the word accountant, I know what you guys are thinking. The calculator, writes things, can do sums, counts things to the last cent. It took me about 10 years to realize I was a very poor accountant. I wasn't actually an accountant at all. But again, going back to my career advice, you either go work or you study. Yeah, that was all there was. So I'm not a very detailed person. And as the factory was growing, the business was growing, I realized there was a lot of stuff just falling off the table, which I wasn't attending to, because we all default to what we like. And so at 5 to 5 in the afternoon, that last stuff in your inbox on the table, well, I'll get to that then. And you know, especially, I mean, your business, you work with your hands and stuff. And I know people like you. I don't know if it's you, but the admin is a shambles because it lies there and it's full of grease, and I've seen it. And then at the end of the month, but I haven't invoiced that person and this and that. And I know that because I've seen it, and it's a problem. So my weaknesses and failures, I had to find somebody that had a much more of attention to detail to be able to pick that stuff up for me, to deal with the cross the T's and dot the I's. So you as I say, you have to become much more aware of what you're going to do. So that was definitely part of my journey. We still got power there, Zita. The power will go back on now. No, it's normal.
Yeah, and I mean, another question is as well, your business is growing and all of a sudden you decide, okay, we need to get funding, we need to get investments. How do you, as an entrepreneur, how do you start that process, and where do you start looking? Do you knock on doors that you think, oh, this person drives a Porsche, so they'll have money? How does that process work? You first go knock at the bank. That's where you always start. But those people forever let me down. And the next place is family and friends. That's where you go. Sometimes first family and friends, depending on who your family and friends are. So I got a bit of funding in 2010 from a friend of mine in Stellenbosch, and through my network. And he got a shareholding in the business, and he not only brought the money, but he brought expertise and network, because he'd also become a well-respected business guy, and he was running a very big company in Stellenbosch. So that helped. So that's why this network that you guys are building at the Village Guys is crucially important, and that's pretty much it. That's where it goes. The banks, family and friends, and bigger concerns which look at things. I mean, I'm sure that if you're not, you should be connected to these venture capital platforms as well. I know these are things like crowdfunding now, but that's probably not relevant for this. But certainly the venture capital guys will look at it. But again, those come with big T's and C's, bigger than the Vodacom contracts. Yeah. So what is the Andre Haasbroek normal day now? Of course, you started the business, you worked, I'm assuming, a lot of hours to get the business going. So what's life like now?
So when we sold, I said to the guys that bought, I'm very happy to stay on. I'm not going to stop working. If I don't work here, I'm definitely going to work somewhere else. And I said to them up front, I like this industry. I like the people I work with. I even like our customers. And I'm happy to stay. I had to sign a contract for a year. And that was 4 or 5 years ago, I think. So we just stayed on. My role's changed, so I don't run these operations anymore at all. At all, as you said, my title is now an information officer. So I look at the digital automation of the business and the factories, trying to make it a lot more efficient. But again, that's that sort of almost fits in with what I was doing. It's new.
Yeah.
It's new. It's something you got to build. You've got change issues, both within the business, with the people, with customers, with suppliers. It's not always easy, but it's something that you've learned as an entrepreneur. That, oh well, okay, I didn't succeed today, but there's always tomorrow. And I say, as long as you've got that desire and that passion to do what you want to do, it's fine. Because we started this way back in the old Nibbly Bits factory. So that is pretty much most of my time. One of my big passions is working with Johan at Communities of Abundance, which is also, it's a growing business, and for me that's something that's going to succeed. We're gonna see that.
So you never had the urge to start something, start selling something as an entrepreneur? Bug isn't not bothering you?
Sure, it does. Yeah, because as I say, there's something about working in formal business, and there's something about entrepreneurship, and we sold the business, and it's fine. So something goes, but you get something in exchange for that. There's a process with people and whatever. So sure, there's always this urge to, well, let's start something else. But yeah, I take this view in life that life's a journey. Yeah, what happened in the past, it's fine, and what happened in the future, there's nothing much I can do about it right now.
Yeah.
What I can do something about is where I am in at the moment. Yeah. So sure, there's something down the line, but to say I've got no remorse about the past. It was a great journey. One thing I do need to say is that I'm 50 old. You're probably also roughly my age, I suppose. Doing your head, but I mean, with your in your networks and your people, learn from people. There was one thing that as I've learned, going back to the army is a place I didn't want to be. But at some point, as you get into this army, I realized that you've got to make the best of this thing, because if you don't, the only person you're spiting is yourself. So you sort of learn to do this, and you learn a couple of things as you go. And then as my career moved, I worked at one of the departments within Bacoma. I won't say what it is, and we had a terrible boss, the guy at the top. He used to shout at people, used to swear at people, and it was just a toxic environment. And so, you get to the point, is that, well, are you going to take this guy on board, or are you just going to leave him there, over there? You're not going to take him on board and learn from what this guy did. And I would say some of the success of Nibbly Bits was not only what I did, but what I didn't do, because I learned how not to run a business. So you've got to keep learning not only the good stuff, but the bad stuff. One thing I've just actually thought of now is that as your business grows, I mean, I think the fancy word now, business word, is you've got to pivot.
Yeah. After COVID.
But yeah, it's a very fancy word, but it's just, I think all it is just applying common sense to what you're seeing in the market. It's no good when you decide, well, I don't like what I'm doing anymore, I'm going to go and sell cars. It's just too, it's not irrelevant. You've to see what you've got, see what the customer's needs are, and move on. I mean, the example that I've got are these Nibbly bit shops you're talking about. So we were an industrial operation. We are making products for a retailer, which in this case was Woolworths. So we didn't sell to the public at all, but we'd make it and everything was fine. And then we sort of started looking and said, well, what's all the stuff going out the back door? It's waste and pieces, and we're making rejects, and what's it costing us? So we started looking at it and said, what are we going to do with this? So again, the Nibbly Bits shop started. No, you wouldn't know. Our first little unit was just here down the road opposite Kaap Agri, in that little road, Distillery Street, and it was 150 square meters, and then we made it 200. Then what we did is, and people would stop there, but they could smell the stuff. And I said, what do you sell? I said, no, we don't sell anything here. We sell it on. And then we had these stuff going out the back door. So at that point, we made a call. The crumbs. We started selling all these things, crumbs in the rust making process, because when you dry rusks, you should have got to break them apart, and the things would break. So we'd pull those pieces. And then you'd have the guys that really messed up in the factory, which you'd call rejects. And these things would be thrown out. So we actually had this big roller door in these industrial units. So what we did is we opened the roller door and we just closed it off inside, and closed the whole top and rolled this thing up. And we had start off with just a shelf. It was about this big with a couple of packers on it. And the production manager used to, when people come, he'd have a little box with money in it, and he'd take his R5 and put it in the box, and that's how it started. And then then it ended up looked like a train station there, because people would come in and say, what are we going to do? We can't do this. And so in the new factory we opened in Wellington, we actually had a little shop, which also became impossible because people were coming in there and we couldn't accommodate them. That's when we decided, well, this is untenable. What do we do? And then we opened the shop. And then at that point, we also said the crumbs that would come out, we would donate stuff to Magda's Sopkombuis. And then they said, well, and I said, she came to us one day and said, well, you don't make any, we don't have stuff anymore. And then we realized all those crumbs we were selling in the shop. So we made a decision, we don't sell any crumbs. We donate the crumbs and we'll sell these rejects and pieces. And then we got to a point where we didn't have enough rejects and pieces to sell because, well, we were getting better at what we were processing, and there was a bigger demand for these things. And they said, well, what do? We've got a shop which is always empty. We can never supply enough. Then we sort of started adding products, and that's the way it started. It was never started as we're going to open a chain of biscuit shops. Never. And that to me is a good example of what we call a pivot, I suppose. It's just out of a need and a situation and a problem, we were looking for a solution. And that's how they started. It was no business plan.
3 books that you think every entrepreneur should be reading.
First one, Mindset by Carol Dweck. Good to Great from Jim Collins. And the third book is, which is an optional extra, is a book called Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's a heavy read, and it's about human nature. Yeah, but that's a heavy read. Stick to the first 2. But if you're going to choose one of the 2 of them, read Mindset by Carol Dweck. It's a fascinating study of people that see the glass either half full or half empty. And so either you have And for an entrepreneur, she calls it a fixed mindset against what's fixed mindset against a learning mindset.
Yeah.
And if you're got a fixed mindset, you say, well, what I have now is what I have, and it cannot be changed. Yeah, the other side of the coin is, well, what I have now is just a stepping stone to where I want to be. And they did very interesting studies on kids, where it's actually from Canada, where they would put these kids in a classroom and then they'd give them some sums. And at some point, the kids do the sums until they get to a point where they can't do it. And some people say no, they give them more difficult sums. And some of the kids say, no, I want to go back to the easy ones. And the other ones say, no, just give me more time. I'm going to solve it now. And this lady, this professor, based a study on that, and she had some very interesting some results out of that. That's an absolute must. Any person that reports to me in this business and back at Nibbly, I give a copy of Mindset. Now we at the old Nibbly Bits factory, through this reading thing, we in the factories we started a reading club, a library in the factories. So all the production people would come, and certainly the production manager that got into this as well made his production managers who weren't highly qualified read the books, and then they have to come and give feedback on what they read. And there's some really good books out there, Thinking Fast and Slow. Yeah. There's a lot of them out there. Get your hands on anything that gets recommended to you and read it. It's important.
And lastly, so what you know now? What would you have done differently then?
Well, the answer to that it's very easy now, but it wasn't easy then. Yeah. I would have been a lot more aggressive in what I wanted to do. I would do something and then wait to see what happened, and then do something and wait, and do something and wait. I would really have pushed it a lot more. I would have backed myself a lot more, because I knew we inherently knew we had a good concept, because the product we had was nothing like what was in the market, and we didn't push it enough. And probably that was my accounting training, to be conservative. Don't push things. But in hindsight, it's I would have been a more aggressive with what I was wanting to do, and I would have tried to broaden my network a lot more than what I did. But again, that's one of my personal issues. I'm more of an introvert than an extrovert. So so you read, well, how do you overcome that, and how do you reach out in network situations? But again, I would have tried to have improved that part of my personality a lot quicker than what I did.
Andre, thanks.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any questions. Do you have a question? Must take the roving mic. You can just talk into this and ask the question.
One of the stress questions I want to ask you is, what did you do? What did you do if your supplier tells you, I don't have stock?
Why are you asking the difficult questions? No, that is a problem. So we realized that pretty much up front that these things do happen. So we would open second suppliers. But I know what you're going to tell me. Well, you can't open a second supplier and you never buy from him, and then this guy, you only buy from him when this guy runs out. But it was a conscious decision of ours to make sure that we had what we call a second supplier. And some of the things that we imported, some of those essences and what have you, there wasn't a second supplier. So we had to be really, really clued up on making sure that we order in time, finding out what these guys are. And then when we started having issues, or speak to our customer who is Woolies and say, look, we have issues with these guys. Do you think we can make a product like this or that? What is the customer going to think about that? So we would actively manage that on a regular basis to make sure that we had enough. I'm not sure where all your suppliers come from, but that is a real problem. and it, certainly during COVID was an even bigger problem, which it affected everybody. But you have to actively go and manage that weeks and months ahead. And I know, we entrepreneurs, we've got to worry about tomorrow's bank balance. But again, find somebody that can sort of help you with that, and or put in your diary. Write in your diary next week, next Friday between 11:30 and 12:30. Let me go through my 5 top suppliers, and are they still okay? You got to you got to try and get into that forward thinking and plan that time, because if you don't plan the time, you're never going to get around to it. And say, well, why is it this guy shorting me? Is he the only guy? Well, nothing we can do about it, or what are the other possibilities?
Another question I want to ask you: with this load shedding now affecting you, instead of where you pay Eskom 500 rand, and with a bill that's hitting you now to 5,000 rand per hour, how's that really hitting your pocket?
It's affecting. So the fact I was down at the factory. I understand it's cost us R500,000, for a week to keep those generators going. But again, in your case, that 500, that R500,000, 5,000 could be the equivalent of R500,000. You're right. It's just the cost of business has gone up, and I know you can't. It's very difficult to pass that on to the customer. Here's a customer-facing man right here. You try and get that through the market. It's very, very difficult. But again, it's coming back to that book mindset. Do you see the glass half empty, or is it full? I see these opportunities here. Keep your business afloat and ride it out, because on the other side, the 10 competitors you had won't be there. Just ride it out. There's always opportunity in a crisis. Always. You just got to be able to determine it. Just maintain the faith that it's gonna happen for you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
My name is Candice.
Hi, Candice.
My question is about when you're just starting out.
Yep.
Going back to what you said about, you would have been more aggressive, and that's pretty much what I did. But now I'm wondering, is it wise to set a limit? This is the amount of money that I'm going to spend before I throw the towel in. And I feel like I've blown past my budget. I've blown through that goal, and I'm wondering, when do I stop? Should I stop? Is this a mindset? Is this an incorrect mindset? Or is it just about I'm getting to this goal no matter what?
I love the term, I'm wondering. That means that you're actively thinking hard about what's going on here. So that's a good start. I think, again, coming back to that common sense thing, but I know more entrepreneurs than I don't know that just don't know when to give it up. They went there until they just cleaned it out. They just went down. I was actually speaking to Miles about it earlier on. He said, well, at what point do you say this is not working and give it up or carry on? And I think I mentioned it sort of probably before you came here. If you have a problem in your operation, like a supplier that doesn't supply, or I don't know what you do, but the machinery breaks down, or if you give a service, your internet doesn't work, that to me is something which you don't give up because of that. If you don't have a customer base, if you don't have what I call this customers who are willing to pay, WTP, if you don't have willing to pay customers, that to me is a terminal problem. And the other stuff, you can work it out. You can find somebody to work it out. But if your customer base is dwindled or left, or you can't what we call pivot to other products or services or customers, then you got to really think about your voortbestaan, existence there.
All right. So what I wrote down here is what you were struggling was with your time. So what I wrote is be disciplined with your time. So I think sometimes with entrepreneurs, like burnout is there, and all of the things that comes with burnout, depression, and just being tired and neglecting your family and friends. When did you know was the time like to find rest in this journey?
Sorry, I missed that. Was the noise? What
Sorry,
was the question?
like when did you know like the appropriate time to find rest in like your hustling?
Bronwyn, that was always a problem, and it's always is a problem for all of us. When you actually know that you now need to take a break, and sometimes, yeah, if you've got a spouse, or my wife would tell me it's time to take a break, or you usually get that from that input from outside. So it is a real concern. Yeah, I made the decision that when my kids were growing up, I would attend as many extramural activities as what I could. Um, um, that was to make sure that I was spending time with my family. So you've got to make sure you've got people that love you, and and yet you trust. They're gonna tell, listen, Bronwyn, you've got to take some time off. One of the things that I learned at one of my previous works, and which I implemented at when I was Nibbly was growing, is that whatever days you had leave in a year, you had to take 10 consecutive work days. For 2 weeks, you were off, and we don't phone you. As much as it was, you want to phone people, you don't phone them, because those 2 weeks rest once a year is critical for the business, because you regenerate. Your mind regenerates. One of the I put it on my CV. The most important education I ever had was a course I did at UCT called Creativity, and how you can use creativity to improve your life, people around you, and obviously your business. And that came from that, is that your mind, just like your body, needs to close down and rest, because they call this process incubation. And a good example is sometimes you go to bed, and next morning you wake up, you've got a sort of a bright idea, but it's because you've been thinking these things. Those of I know you run. I don't know if you still run, but when you run, you have these. I found at a time where you just sort of think, and you think, oh, jeez, I wish I had my dictaphone. I could write a note now. As you're running, But that is really, really important time. Your work time and your quiet time is really important. But I think the best advice I can give you is you need outside input. The people that know you well have got to tell you, listen, take a break. It doesn't have to be 2 weeks, but a day or 2 or 3, just get off the bus and take it easy. And I know it's not so easy because business happens. Yeah.
We were talking about networking earlier on, and that's something that you would have done more of. I always wonder, is that word again?
Good. Keep wondering.
What's your end game? I mean, I know the value of networking, but when you go in and you meet people and stuff, what's the strategy? Like, what do you want to get from them? What can you give them in return? I think about one person that my uncle actually suggested I should connect with, but our businesses don't really align that well. She targets a different audience than me. And so I was thinking, well, what would be the value? Or is it just meet anybody, as many people as you can, and just exchange business cards? I feel like do you understand my question?
I do. I think it depends on your personality as well. I've told you I'm an introverted sort of a person. So I won't naturally just go and talk to somebody. So that makes it quite difficult. Unlike Miles, that just picks up a chat with anybody. So I too, with this networking thing, I had to make a conscious decision that I would go to somebody and I'd ask and I'd listen to them, irrespective of what field they were in or what they were doing. Just go and listen, to take interest in them as a person. As I say, it's part of what I believe we should be doing. Take interest in people for no gain, just to go and listen to people and make a note. I've on your cell phone you've got these notes, and some of this technology is great. And then just either just write it in, or you just have a dictaphone and just say, met this person, he's in that business, and and as you go through life, you go, oh, geez, was that guy going? He did this, and oh, maybe I should give him a call. And he said he knew that person, and so when you network people, I think it should be, that's my feeling anyway. Other than just getting to know people, who you are, what makes you tick, without expecting anything in return. That's my philosophy on it.
So you're saying like just make friends? Because I mean, you would have to nurture that as well.
Well,
Send them an email every now and again.
Not necessarily. No, depends on the context, Candice. Like a business meeting like this, and just see who's here, get the detail, and well, sometimes you just click with people, and you will be buying next weekend with them. But other people, it's just for it's just to get to know them, because you can't. And that's what I've realized also with a growing business is that, as I said at the beginning, I used to know everybody's name in the business when we were 20 odd people. But when you're 800 people, you just can't. So you've got to concentrate on the people that report to you. You've got to build much closer bonds with those people than with other people. Not that you don't like them, is that you just don't have time to plow into those people. It's like your family. You spend a serious time with family because it's important to you. So if we chatting, we talk about things, we have something in common, but you got much more in common with your family than you got with me. But again, we could exchange ideas with this. And I say, one of the other things I want to say is that I'm 55, and I make an effort when I speak to people to try and learn something from somebody that I don't know, because there's lots of stuff I don't know, and teach me something. Some of my people that report to me in this business, I want to learn from them, so they got to talk to me. They can teach me stuff that I don't know, and that is part of this learning culture or learning mindset we've got to develop. Yes, Paul.
Yes, Andre, to latch on what you said just now, learning from you, always open to learn from other people. If you look back, did you have certain people that you could say were mentors in your life, and how important would you classify mentorship to entrepreneurs?
Didn't touch on it. Very important, Paul. I had a mentor. He actually died 3 weeks ago. He lives in Seattle, but he was 80 something. But I would go to him and just sit and listen to what he's got to say. I think it's crucial to that, because, as I said, you sometimes can't see the wood from the trees anymore, and you just need an out. Okay, then the guy, if it's a good mentor, he will say, okay, well, tell me what's happened the last 3 days. That's what do you make that decision? What about that? Just helping you refocus your thoughts. And that's the thing with that business organization I was involved in. We had a structured, what we call a forum, and you'd sit and you'd have a check-in, which is you'd have to do it for 6 minutes, and it was limited to 6 minutes. So you had to think of what you had said and say, well, what happened the last 3 days in my business? What happened the last 3 days in my personal life? What happened the last 3 days with my family? What happened the last 3 days in my walk with my creator? Those are the things you've got to. And I say, if you're not intentional about that, your life can drift. And I say that mentor's role helps you in that process. I mean, I know guys in their 60s that I still have mentors. And at the moment, I don't have one. But again, they in their 60s and they're saying, well, and I asked them why. I said, well, I've got kids and I've got grandkids. What am I building into my family? And they're not even talking about business, they're just talking about family connection. But the question is, find a mentor, somebody you trust, just so you can sit there and chat through things and they can speak into your lives.
Thanks.
Andre, thanks so much
Yeah,
for insightful conversation. I think the highlights for me is, of course, reading, very important. And just learning as you go along. And then also, thanks for hosting us as well. This was really, really cool. We got to taste some of the rusks that you said you spent hours trying to make perfect, that they break exactly in half. And I really appreciate the time because I was telling Zita when I got here, I was a bit tired, but I mean, these conversations, I think I've got my energy back now for the rest of the evening. But thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. So as an introvert, I've probably spent all my words for the whole week now, probably for next week as well. Yeah, but it's like hosting your people, and all the best for the businesses. I love seeing businesses flourish because I know the joy and the pleasure you get from seeing things grow, even though when you're in the process, it's really tricky.
Yeah.
But all the best.
And guys, thanks everybody for joining. And the guys on the interwebs, thanks for joining as well. Keep you posted for the next Business Lab. Thanks, Andre.
Cool, thanks, Miles. Cheers.
Cool, man. Bye.
Thank you.
So much.
Pleasure.
That's so cool.